Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right everyone, let's get into this weekly wrap up for the last week of August. And I know these last ones have all been an hour, but just get settled in. I'm preparing you that I have a lot to say this week because I had 2 6-star books that I read this week. And if you watched my monthly wrap up yesterday, you already know which ones those are because I already talked about them. But I have so much to say about what I read this week. It was actually wonderful. So before I get into it, I don't have any new patrons or channel members to welcome, but I just want to say another thank you, as always, up at the front for everyone who helps me be able to do this. It's just, it never gets old. And I say it every time, and I don't care because it's true, but I'm just happy to be here with you guys today. I got my coffee, my cute mug. I love this mug. I actually got this at Joann's. Isn't it adorable? It says Hexy Witch. Enough of that. Let's get into these. So the first one that we've got to talk about is I did a quick little reread of The Front Runner. I annotated this one for one of the annotated pre-orders that I just did, which when you're watching this, if you're watching it on Sunday or Monday, the next annotated pre-order just opened, so I thought I would use this opportunity to tell you about it. I put a post about it on my Patreon public page, which means because you can follow my Patreon without being a member, and I do post some things there for the public. Generally, if I'm having a sale on my Etsy or I am doing one of these pre-orders, my patrons all get first access, so definitely check that out. But I know I talk about my annotated books a lot. I only have 7 spots on my monthly annotated books that I do, but what I've been doing for the last year is pretty much every other month I open up for pre-orders for some of these, and you can pick from a list of my favorites that I've read and annotated before, or you can request your own. And there are a few like rules in the thing about which things you can do, because I do these as kind of an extra on top of everything, and they also help me with my taxes. That's how I do them. I've started doing them so that I can make my quarterly tax payments, or as close to them as I can, because anyway, so that's kind of what my promo this week is. But also that meant someone had picked The Front Runner, which I hadn't annotated before, so I did have to reread this one. And I forgot how much I really like this. This was my favorite one in the Gold Rush Ranch. Now, granted, I actually haven't read the last one, and I knew I hadn't. I was saving it for like a rainy day, but you know, we've had many a rainy day since then, and I still haven't read it yet. But at this point, the audiobook for the last one, which I think is a false start, the last one, or is that, what's the last one called? Oh, it's not in the old book. Come on, old books didn't used to list them. Yeah, A False Start will be the last one, and the audiobook will be out soon, so I might just wait for that. But this one is about Stefan Dalka, who is like this broody billionaire who now is into horses, and he's kind of the rival to Gold Rush Ranch. And he also is really into this really hot veterinarian who is kind of the like veterinarian on call that sees to a lot of the horses, well, all the horses on Gold Rush Ranch. And she's also the one that sees to his horses now too, because they're the closest like vet to there. And there's been some competition between these two, and Billy Black particularly hates Stefan, though Stefan doesn't hate them. He actually thinks it's a little bit funny, their rivalry, and he's really into it, but they hate him. They hate the jockey who's been representing him because that guy is not good news. But Stefan, he's a good guy. They give him a lot of crap because they haven't seen the best of him. But he's really been pursuing like Mira, like he really wants to go on a date with her, and she always is turning him down. And a lot of the reason she's turning him down is like, you're a rival to my best friend's business, you know, like I'm here to help your horses, but I don't want anything else from you, you know. So anyway, the way that this one starts out is actually pretty tragic, because Gold Rush Ranch has the mother of their first foal that is from one of their racing guys that they love, one of their horses that they really care about. So it's his first foal that's being born, and the mother dies, which is very tragic. So they have a foal who is not thriving, right? He's not taking well to being bottle fed, and it's not looking good. Now, literally, I think the next day or at the same time, at Stefan's farm. I don't want to call him Stephen, but Stefan, at his farm, he loses a foal. So we do have to see the loss of 2 lovely horses in the beginning. Like, it's very difficult, so that's a trigger warning. But what comes of it is that Mira sees that this has happened to both of them, and she's like, I know what we can do. Let's bring the foal from Gold Rush Ranch and pair her with the mare and see if she'll accept it. And so Stefan agrees to this if the foal comes to stay at his place, because he's like, we're not sending my horse over there. And she's like, well, and he's like, no, it makes the most sense for her to stay here and bring him here. You're gonna be here to see him every day, it's fine. But he also kind of itty bitty blackmails her into 3 dates with him, and he will let this happen, which, let's be real, as Mira will eventually tell, like, Billy and the people there, they're like, he saved this foal's life, so you need to get over it. And like, you may have rivalry with him in other ways, but he's not going to hurt this foal. He wants him to do well, right? And that's the door opened for Stefan to start to woo Mira. So yeah, there's some other drama, of course, going on in the background. We wouldn't want to forget that, but that's kind of the main thing of this one. And this was 5 stars when I read it the first time. I don't know if it's still quite that, but I did still rate it that. You guys know I don't really take stars back, because I wouldn't make it a 4-star. I would maybe make it like 4.5, because there are a few things that kind of irritated me this time. But when I read it the last time, right, I was reading 1, 2, and 3, and I liked it the best of those 3. So I don't have like bad things. I just don't like, this was one of those where like the 3rd act breakup, as it were, was just, it didn't make sense what he was blaming her for. And I was a little annoyed with her, like, not telling him. So anyway, that's why it'd be like a 4.5, but we're splitting hairs. This was a good story for me for sure. So it is still rated as a 5-star. It's a 3 on the spice scale. We do use some toys in this one. That's fun. And again, there's trigger warnings for death of 2 animals in the beginning of this, so be prepared for that. Let's see, was there anything else? Oh yeah, sexual harassment, domestic abuse are references to those, and animal death typical with farm life is what they said, which is true. It is true. As a farmer's daughter, I have seen thankfully never a horse, but definitely some calves, and a heifer or 2 who passed because of bad birth, which is never fun. Okay, then I read How to Fall for a Scoundrel. So I had an arc for this one way ahead of time, but you guys know, particularly with historical arcs, sometimes it's hard to kick my butt into gear and get to them. But I was okay with waiting for this because I wanted the audiobook. So I did buy it the day it came out so that I was at least supporting it that way. That's something that with historical arcs, I don't do this for all the indie arcs because indie books are pretty expensive. But if there's a historical arc that I requested and I didn't get to it, and so I'm not helping the author that way by reading it ahead of time, I try to buy it so that I can, you know, take a picture of it or whatever. And I love Kate Bateman. I wasn't in the mood. But the audiobook was delightful. It was narrated by, hold on, I always make a note of that. This was narrated by Beverly A. Crick, which I believe I've heard her before. I don't remember which things I have, but she was very good. And this one is book 2 in Her Majesty's Rebels. So if you didn't read the first one, which was, what was that one? That one was something about a duke. Second Duke's the Charm, yeah, which was about one of the other ladies in this little kind of detective agency that they've created, where they call it the King and Co. And the head guy is supposed to be Charles King, right? And it's a name that they made up. They named after their dog, and they've pretended that they're like Patron, the boss of this detective agency, just doesn't want anyone to see him, right? So that he's able to go undercover to places and things like that. When really it's these 3 women who are running it, right? And this was in the first book, if you read it, like that heroine was a duchess because her like husband had died and there wasn't anyone to take over yet. And so she was a duchess and she had the money to start this. The heroine in this one, she's not from a super wealthy family. She's more from like not like working class, but just like, you know, I'd say like mid-level gentry, I think is what she is, or something like that is what they'd call it. And she and her friends do these mysteries. And so she's actually, because everyone knows that who works for King and Co. So they can go and talk to these ladies to get an appointment with Charles King when really it's just them, you know. And as she's hearing about a possible new job, there's this man who waltzes up and pretends to be Charles King, which, again, doesn't exist. And she can't really say anything without like outing all of them right then. And so there's this charmer. He goes by the name Henry Bonnier, or Harry, and he claims that he is this Charles King and he wants to help. So she just kind of has to put up with it while they're in the middle of this. And then once they get some time alone, he explains who he is and why he's there. And he explains that he figured out that it's fake, that there is no Charles King, because he was looking to possibly work with Charles King, okay? So our hero, Harry, he is what he says, he's an ex-criminal. And I really liked this. This is just the setup of the book, of course. I really liked this because he explains, you know, she's like, well, I've never heard of you. And he's like, well, that's the point, right? All the good criminals that are heard of, they are hanged or they're in prison or whatever. Like a good thief, a good, you know, whatever, like they are never found out and they stop when they're ahead. And so he's at that point. He's like, I'm tired of thieving. I have enough money, but I'm worried that I'm bored. And so I thought that was so clever because he's like, I still want to use the skills that I've acquired as a thief, but I don't want to steal anymore. And so obviously our heroine, Ellie, is very distrustful of this and is just like, no, but also a lot of it is because she's very attracted to him too. And she just is like, well, we can't trust you. And he's like, let me prove myself. So her friends and her agree to give him a trial run for the current mystery that they're working on. And then they begin. And so that's what this one is this was a mystery novel, basically. Like, it was a historical mystery novel, basically, because they're working on this crime. They're trying to find who stole this bracelet that is possibly connected with Bonaparte. I believe it was a diary. I think it was a diary. Sorry. I don't know why I thought it was a bracelet. There's a bracelet in another book I read this week. You know how that goes. Anywho, and yeah, this felt a little like kind of like Sherlock Holmes without the meanness. And you'll see if you read it, just the way that he observes, the way that he knows what's going on. You know, he's able to like pick locks and figure things out very easily. And so there was this quality of Sherlock Holmes in here, without him being kind of the like, you know, he doesn't have maybe the social awkwardness that some versions of Sherlock Holmes, right? A lot of people show Sherlock Holmes as maybe being on the spectrum in some cases, both like in, you know, Sherlock show as well as like Elementary, you know, that one. This man is definitely like nicer. So again, I'm not making the Sherlock comparison because that like the author isn't trying to. I'm making that as like, that's what I enjoyed about it. You know, I listened to this, I think it was over 2 days, but because I had other things to do, but this was a quick audiobook. I really liked it. And this was fun. So I ended up with this one. I gave it 4 stars. It was a 2 on the spice scale. Really solid. I mean, there wasn't anything super, you know, like unpredictable about it. There wasn't anything that got me overly like excited. It was a solid book. I had a good time, and I'm interested enough in what the third friend's book is going to be. And I think that's all we can ask for with that, right? Okay. All right. Now we're getting into it, okay? I just could not help myself. I couldn't contain myself. And I read In the Details by Julia Wolf. This book will be out on the 12th. There's actually 5 books that I have that are out on the 12th. I actually read 2 of them this week that are out on the 12th because I got audio of the other one. So, you know, it's not that I can't read ARCs early. That's why we get sent them. It's just I have a lot of books coming out before In the Details that I should have read. But how is a girl to resist when the last 5-6 books I've read by her have been 5 stars or above, okay? I have 2 6-star reads from Julia Wolf just this year alone. Both Jump on 3, right, was way at the beginning of the year. I gave 5 stars to Not So Truly Yours. And then this one is the spin-off series, which is Mile High Billionaires. And this one is a female billionaire. So this is Clara Rossi, and I know I've mentioned this a ton, so you may already know the setup because I've talked about it a lot, but this is Luca's older sister. She's older by just a couple of years than him. And if you've read Sincerely Your Inconvenient Wife, you could read that one. I mean, you should read P.S. You're Intolerable. You should read all of them because they're really good. But if you read Sincerely Your Inconvenient Wife, you could then like go right into this one because, you know, it's kind of a direct follow-up to that one, even though the other books are in there. But anyway, if you read that one, Clara has a baby and gets like divorced in that one. Her husband she'd been with for a while. I won't spoil it, but things go pretty badly with that. And I remember that at the end of Not So Truly Yours, she revealed that like Clara was going to be the start of the new series. And I was so excited about it because yeah, Clara I wouldn't call her like plus size. She has like mom bod, that's what we should call it, right? Like her body shows that she's had a child, and she's maybe a little self-conscious about that because she is 37, but she's also like not focused on it. So this isn't a book where she's like constantly thinking about her. Julia Wolf is someone that I really love how she does plus size rep, because I mean in every series there's someone who is, and you know, sometimes the women are insecure about it, but they also don't do like spiral about it very much, which I greatly appreciate because, you know, I've shared this many times, being a plus size woman myself, and was even more plus size for many years. I still am now. It's not like that has really changed, right? I don't think about it constantly, but I do think about it, you know, at least a couple of times a day. I think about that I'm uncomfortable. I just don't I don't hate myself for it, okay? Whereas I know some people do, and I don't judge them for that. I want them to feel better in their skin, but you know, anyway, that's not where I'm even going with this one because this book doesn't focus on it that much. I'm just mentioning that there are other books of Julia Wolf's that do that as well, and I like how they do that. So anyway, Clara begins this book with a one-night stand, and we learn it's not her first. This is really like a third or fourth night stand that she's had with a mysterious stranger named Jake at a biker bar. So yes, the Rossis, they own this like motorcycle company. They are like the name in motorcycles, and she loves to ride. She has ridden since she was, you know, had a license basically. She said she either rode behind her dad or she's been driving herself this whole time. And now that she has I think her daughter's 3 is how old her little girl is. Her little girl is 3. You know, she lets herself get away like once a month or so and will go on a weekend away, like biking all over and everything, or a night away it is. And she has the past, like, I don't remember how many months, but she's met up at this bar with this guy she'd had a one-night stand with, who also was a biker there, and they have this really hot connection. So we begin this book with seeing their like third or fourth night stand that they're having, and she has a lot of fantasies about her biker guy, but they're just for these nights away that she has. She has too much life to go back to. And Jake hasn't really tried to push her for more either. They both, whenever they meet up, it's great. They pleasure each other. They have, you know, some meaningless conversation, and then they go back to their life. And then she runs into him at one point when she needs help fixing her car, and she discovers him as like the maintenance guy at this one, like chain, motorcycle parts, garages, whatever it's called. Wow, it just mechanic shop. There we go. Jeez. One of those like chain versions of one. And they have like not the greatest interaction there. Number one, she feels like her fantasy balloon has just been popped because she's like, shit, this person is real. And he has a weird reaction because he thinks that she maybe stalked him there, which in her mind, again, she's a billionaire from a famous family. So she's like, the nerve that this guy thinks that I would need to like stalk him for some reason. But of course, she doesn't know who he is either. And seeing him in a mechanic thing, he gets a bad vibe from her being like standoffish with him, that she feels let down that he's a mechanic. And so they just don't have a good interaction. The only good thing about it is like he interacts really well with her little girl, because of course he does, okay? Because it's Julia Wolf, and him and the little girl are going to get on famously, right? So weird interaction, and they leave this interaction feeling like, oh wow, I guess that fantasy is done. Like, I don't really want to try to meet up with him anymore. So I guess my bubble is burst in regards to him, right? So then our third, like our next interaction is actually Clara's at work. Her and Luca are going to be meeting with a company that they're potentially going to collaborate with, which is a chain of like maintenance shops, right? And so this company is run by Jake's brother, and Jake runs it too. And actually, that day that he was in the garage is his one day a week that he likes to be in the garage working on cars. So he isn't a mechanic. He is, you know, he's not listed as a billionaire because his company, that's not really how it is. And he's not the owner or CEO. He's there to like support his brother in the same way that, like, I mean, Clara supports her brother, but she is also like, she's a billionaire in what she's done too. So they meet here now. So now we fully know who the other person is. That has like all come out. And they still have kind of some awkward interaction. But now Jake is like, okay, I keep running into this woman. And now I know who she is, and she knows who I am. And her kid is really cute. And like, maybe we don't have to go to the biker bar to hook up. So maybe that'll think. Anyway, I won't walk you through the entire book, but those are our first interactions that we have. And the thing though that Jake hasn't said is he now knows she has a kid, but he has not told her that he has a kid. Because if you recall, this is a double single parent romance, right? That's one of the reasons I was so excited for this one. And she doesn't find out he has a daughter until they end up having a one-night stand and staying at his place. And his daughter and ex-girlfriend, baby mama, come in. And Clara is like just completely overwhelmed because number one, she's like, oh my God, are you cheating on me? And he's like, no, I told you I'm single. But then also there's this daughter and this woman here. And she's like, immediately is thinking, wow, you've known I have a daughter for how many, like, weeks now, days now, and you didn't tell me you have one. And he's like, well, I'm really protective. And she's like, and I'm not protective of my daughter? Like, it was okay that you didn't tell me when we were anonymous people meeting at a bar, but once you knew I had a child, you should have told me you had one. And he gets caught with his pants down with this. So she storms out. And I will say, very good relationship with his ex, who I believe in this one, like they weren't like high school sweethearts, but they were high school fling that got pregnant. And so his daughter is, I think she's 14 or 15. And also Jake is 30. She's 37. So that also makes her feel a bit weird about it too. And so that is like, that's the lay of the land with this. Okay. So he already pretty early on in this book has to do some grovel. We learn why he hasn't said about his daughter, what his feelings are about that. But Clara, you know, she keeps running into this family, right? She runs into his daughter at a farmer's market with her mom. And so she actually really likes the mom of Jake's daughter. They're talking at this thing. And so there's just this crazy connection, and they just keep getting drawn together. Okay. So enough of that part of it. We know they got the chemistry, they got this, and neither of them feels like they're ready for a relationship, yada, yada. It's a thing we've heard a million times. Him, because he only wants to be focused on his daughter. He doesn't think that he, you know, would be a good partner, which is just, in my opinion, ludicrous. The man is a fucking dreamboat. But Claire also has a lot of damage because her relationship did not go well. It's one of these confusing things where, like, she wasn't in an abusive relationship with her husband. Like, from all we know, like, they were a good partner. They'd been together for how long, but he was leading like a secret life, not with cheating on her or having whatever. He was crazy, you know, and I say that with like, he was stalking someone and threatening someone's life. Like, it was a whole thing that happened in, Sincerely Inconvenient Wife, which you'll see if you read that one. And so her ex, he's in prison, you know, so she has a lot of, like, she has trouble trusting people. And so Jake, who we love and she loves, is like, it doesn't matter how dreamy this man is, he's kept some huge secrets from me. And again, their relationship started as secret. They were both being secretive. But for her, it's like, once we laid our cards out, like, I needed you to lay all the cards out and not have me keep figuring out these little things about you as we go, because it feels like she's being blindsided. But anyway, I'm pointing out a lot of the negatives of this. They're both fantastic. You know, this was like Jake, because we know his reasonings for why he's doing that, and we see him like, he's hard to trust, she's hard to trust. So what this one really is like, they don't become enemies because of this. This isn't like any of that stuff. They both decide that they do want to date, and they're going to try that. There's just a lot of different things. They have to field these troubles as they come at them, you know? And in the way that Julia Wolf can do, there isn't a super huge, scary, like, third act in this. There's just, can these two broken people who found their soulmate, can they work together to help each other be together? You know, like sometimes you can love someone as much as you want, and if you're not ready to be with someone, you just can't do it. So are they at that point? Okay, what made this a 6-star book? Because yes, as I said, this was a 6-star read, okay? I ended up liking Jake at the same level as I love an Elliot, okay? And I said this in the monthly wrap-up, but maybe you don't watch my monthly wrap-up, so I need to explain myself here. I've said, like, Elliot, in my opinion, is like a mirage of a man, okay? He is the ideal. He is perfect. Besides some things in the beginning of that book where he doesn't, like, him and Catherine aren't, like, communicating. He is a communication king. He spoils her. He loves her. He lavishes attention on her and her daughter. He is a billionaire dream to Catherine, right? He's too perfect, right? He's too perfect, and we love him. Jake feels real. But he's also like the ideal version of real, okay? And I said this as well, like, he reminds me of men I know in my life. The men in my life that I consider to be good, wonderful, caring partners to my friends, right? I have some men in my life that I know they will be like this for my friends. And I see it, and I am so happy for them, right? And one I want for myself, you know? Because Jake is... he says it like it is, including how he flatters her, how he treats her. He's so good with her daughter. Of course, he's good with his, but he's so good with her little girl. So much so, like, it's just all the little gestures. Julia Wolf excels at little gestures. One of the ones I've been praising right now is there's a scene in it where, like, I think his daughter's getting ready to go to her soccer game, and so he's braiding her hair. And then the little girl, because they're all at his house, like, she spent the night, and the girls had a sleepover. Like, his daughter loves the little girl. It's so cute. And so he's braiding his daughter's hair. And the little girl asks if he'll braid hers, and he's like, I sure will, sweetie. And there's this scene that Julia, like, as she writes it, Clara's watching him do her daughter's hair, and he's like, Jake has such patience. The slippery, thin hair of my little girl keeps falling out of his hands, and he just carefully picks it back up until he's braided her hair in this beautiful way. And then he braids Clara's hair. And he's like, it's your turn, honey. And so she sits down, and not only does he braid her hair, he does this whole, like, coronet with it and everything. So just these little things, like, he braids her hair. It's so beautiful. He's always encouraging her, not just her body, but also just how much she's been able to handle by herself, and how much he admires what a mom she is, and what a person she is, and what a businesswoman she is. He is just, like, he is words of affirmation all the way. But yet he's still blunt and still a little bit rough, because he may also be a part of a wealthy family, but he's also still a bit of a bad boy, okay? Like, he walks this line of being, like, from wealthy family and having privilege, but also being, like, a bad biker boy at the same time. It's really great. And of course there is just scorching intimacy in this book. It's so good, the things he says about her. But there's one line, I think I almost have it memorized, so I'll say that. There's a part where he says, Clara Rossi is a revelation. And no matter what, no matter if I'm not able to give her what she needs or not, I promise I will not be another reason for her not to trust men. That is what I will promise her. And he thinks that pretty early on too, because again, they do agree to, like, date and see how things will go, you know, melding their lives and if they can handle this. And that is his goal. His goal, you know, besides, you know, wanting to woo her and be with her, is to not leave damage behind if he should go. And I think that is such, I don't know what else to say. I think that's such a gentlemanly thought to have. I mean, it's a bit unrealistic, because they're so perfect for each other that if he were, like, if it weren't to work, it would leave devastation behind in its wake. But I love that that's his thought, is he's like, I want her for myself. She's everything I want, everything I didn't know that I need, as someone who thought he was just going to be a single dad, have flings now and then, and just be focused on his daughter. And he's found so much more room in his heart for this woman, but he doesn't want to do damage should they have to go. And I love that. And the final thing I'll say that is something Julia Wolf does so well is making you believe not only that they love their partner, but that they respect them and that they appreciate them as a whole person. Not that anyone is perfect, but I've read very few romance authors who make me believe that they genuinely like would be together forever, and that they're like, that they would be so happy together for always. Like, it makes me so warm and fuzzy inside when I read her books, and I'm just like, wow, Jake and Clara, they're gonna be together for 50 years. I just love that, you know? So anyway, I'll talk about this book many more times to go. I have like, there's just so many small gestures that happen in this book. It's hard to convey them all this way. But I have another one to gush about next, so we'll move along. But pre-order this now. There's a link down below. If you trusted my advice for P.S. You're Intolerable, trust my advice for this one. Trust my advice for all of Julia Wolf, in my opinion. I have a book where I talk about her entire backlist. Go check that out. She puts something extra special into her books. And I know not every book can be like hers. That's why hers feel special. That's why they feel special, is because not every book is one of her books. But it's excellent. So yeah, that was a 6-star read, 3.5 on the spice scale. There was some backdoor action as well as some outdoor action happening. And there is some trigger warnings for bad previous relationships, though not quite abusive. That's what I said. And then I said, Jake has a great baby mama as a positive, like the baby mama is great. Also, this was the thing, he calls Clara mama, and it is so hot because the first scene when he does that, she's like, how do you know I'm a mom? And he's like, well, I know what a C-section scar is, and you have one, and you're beautiful. And he'll like kiss it, and like, I love it. Okay, onward. Okie doke. The next 6-star book was Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. Yes, I read these back to back, and I'm kind of thankful that I did for 2 reasons. One, it honestly made me like really double think, are these both 6-star books? Because it was all-star versus all-star for me. These are 2 of my favorite authors in the past couple years. They are top tier for me. I would recommend them pretty much to anyone. That is a high, high bar, you know? Especially when I think of the fact that earlier this month, I also read an author who used to be a favorite for me, and she isn't anymore, because I feel like she's kind of just sitting at the same quality level always. And that quality level was wonderful to me at one point, but now it's not enough anymore, right? And sorry to take my time with this, but Julia Wolf and Elsie Silver, I feel like they don't stop trying to elevate their story every time. And that's why I'm still able to find more 6-star reads from them. You know, it's like they start their book and they're like, how can I make this one extra special and be as good for people as previous books are, right? If this is the first book you've read from this author, are you going to appreciate it? You know, and I think a lot of the ones that they've written lately, though of course you get a better context and you have better feelings if you've read all of it, you can dive into just that story and it's strong enough to stand on its own. And that's how I feel about these ones. But anyway, so I read Wild Eyes, and yes, it was a 6-star. And as I said in my monthly wrap up, I know some people just don't believe me at this point. I get people already sometimes who think I'm too nice to certain authors' books, but I'm telling you, it's because I like them that much. And I mean, I don't have to defend my taste. I'll just tell you why it was a 6-star read. But, you know, you either trust me or you don't. It's okay. And why I'm even bringing that up is I had someone on a book haul not too long ago say that they were annoyed that I was sharing my PR as a book haul. They're like, this needs to be separate. How are we supposed to trust your reviews if you're getting stuff for PR? And I was like, I understand, but also like, I'm not Book Talk. I'm not being paid to read all the arcs that I read. And in fact, I have so many arcs to read that an author's book better be good or like, I don't have time for it. And I'm not a person who can be bought so easily as you sending me your book. You know what I mean? I know that sounds conceited, but I get sent a lot of books. Okay, I've worked very hard in my career, because this is a career to me, to get to the point where I'm able to get books sent to me. Okay, I've worked hard. I've reviewed hundreds, thousands of books to get to the point where someone wants to send me a book because people value my opinion. Okay, again, this is a side rant. And so it doesn't matter whether it's a favorite author or whether it's one someone sent me a pretty package for. I treat each book individually. The books that I am a bit, quote unquote, nicer to because of that, I will upfront tell you. You know, just like with these two, I'm telling you, these are my favorite authors. It's not because the authors really sent me anything special. Like, in my opinion, getting an early copy, like, it is very kind, but it is still in exchange. You know, like, I'm reading the book for you. You wrote the book for me. I'm reading it for you, and I'm going to talk about it, right? Anyway, oh, Jen, why do you get into these conversations? My point being, I'm not defending that I'm giving these both 6 stars, because you're going to read them and you're going to decide if they were worth me talking about them that way. But I know what I'm looking for in my books, and these two, like, they do that for me, you know? So anyway, Wild Eyes is the next book in Rose Hill, or is it Rose Hill is what the series is? I don't know. The place is called Rose Hill. And this one is about Skylar, who is a famous singer. Think along the lines of Taylor Swift. That's what the author's going for with this. Okay. You'll see when you read it, the situations that this artist is in and how she's feeling about her music. Like, there's a lot of things that relate to, like, an older version, or like a younger version. But by that, I mean like an older version of Taylor Swift, you know? And then we have West, who is Rosie's brother. Okay, he's a single dad. He has 2 kids. He is a horse trainer. He has a ranch. He has employees. I'm actually wearing cowboy stuff in honor of him today. Wearing my cowboy shirt, and then I don't know if you saw, I have my little cow earrings on. Moo! I love them so much. And she comes to town because she's going to be working on an album with Ford and his daughter Cora, and with Ford's new record label, right? That's what the first book was about. Again, if you don't read the first book, it's okay, but that's what's happening in that one, is Rosie and Ford get, like, the record label started. And she's very famous, but she's recently just found out some pretty awful things. She hasn't been happy in her career for quite a while. She was a child star at singing, and she was forced into a lot of this. She doesn't write her own music. She's not, in her opinion, even the best of singers. She's like, there's auto-tune, there's singing lessons. She was made, is her point. She was made into this. And so she doesn't really know who she is anymore. And she's recently had some bad news, which, like, I'm not going to spoil all the details of this. This book comes out on the 3rd. But she's found out some things that have made her, she's not speaking with her parents or her manager or any of it. She's taking this break. She wants to start working on this new album with Ford and not be connected to any of her old life. And so she comes here, and she is still, you know, very much in the mode of, like, she's taking pictures of everything and wanting to Instagram stuff and post it. And so much so that she ends up in a bit of a dangerous situation in the beginning. She's being a little bit of TSTL, if you know what I mean. Trying to get a little too close to the wildlife, as it were. And West, he happens to come across her when she's doing this, and he's like, lady, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, it's a picture. And he's like, that animal, which is a bear, could kill you. What are you doing? So she feels a bit, you know, embarrassed about that and everything. But so your immediate impression is that this is going to be like a prissy, like, good type of thing where she's going to be difficult to deal with. She's not. But at the start of this book, she is still kind of in that, like, fake mode, what we call it. Like, she's on still, as it were. And the more time she spends at Rose Hill, like, we see her, like, deprogramming herself a bit and, like, getting in touch with nature, touching grass, you know, like, literally she's touching some grass. Okay. But she's come here because she wants a fresh start. And, you know, West, he helps with that because he would never tell, but he's actually a huge fan of hers. He loves her music. His daughter loves her music. Everybody loves her music. But he doesn't treat her like she's a starlet, okay? It's not that he's cruel or mean, but he is pretty snarky. And he also is, you know, like, doesn't take her too seriously. And she needs that. Like, she really needs that. And so also she ends up staying in his bunkhouse. So this is kind of a, you know, it's a forced proximity. He's her... because there isn't really any place for her to live yet that would be, like, safe and that would be good. And so Rosie, who, like, she used to stay in the bunkhouse before, you know, she's living with Ford now. She moves into the bunkhouse. She comes with her parrot. I think it's a parrot, but she has a talking bird who is foul-mouthed and adorable. And so she moves into this bunkhouse. And, you know, her interactions with West, they are pretty sexually charged, though I still felt that Elsie held that tension really good. Like, yes, we talk about them being attracted, but what I liked is that she didn't use as many of the cock and the dick to describe him being attracted. Do you know, like, I've talked about it enough. Like, there wasn't an overabundance of dick twitches or cock jumping. you know, that is something that I'm just have no taste for these days. There are other ways that she shows attraction, and honestly, that's all I'm looking for, because I want the two of them to be hot for each other. I still want the spice. I just want us to slowly heat up instead of dropping me in a pot of boiling water, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, obviously he's attracted to her, and she's attracted to him, but he keeps it very, like, chill with it. Like, they both know they're eyeing each other up, but they also know she's not there forever. She's there to get this album done, and then she'll probably have to leave. He isn't planning to go anywhere. He also isn't planning to be married again. He has his kids and his work and, like, the bowling league that the dads do, and, you know, he isn't sure that he has room for that, right? But I mean, of course we do. So I really love that. I loved how she started coming alive, you know, with being in nature. I loved her interactions with his kids. There's some super cute ones. She actually goes to, like, soccer practice with them one day, and she calls him Coach Thick Thighs. That was a real joke throughout it, because he's wearing, you know how it is. He's got some rancher thighs from lifting and working with horses and all those things, right? And then he's, like, wearing gym shorts and stuff while he's coaching the soccer team or whatever. So she calls him Coach Thick Thighs in front of her bird one day. And so now her bird, whenever the bird sees Cade, or not Cade, sorry, Freudian slip, whenever she sees West, the bird, like, says, Coach Thick Thighs. It's great. It's great. It's hilarious. She puts the right amount of humor into all of this. This was narrated, I did listen to the ALC of this, so this was narrated by Teddy Hamilton, Savannah Peachwood, and there were songs performed by, there were 2 songs performed in this. And I don't have the narrators written in this, but I do have them in my review, which was wonderful. There are 2 songs that she writes while she's at Rose Hill, and they're both actually, like, Elsie had someone actually, like, sing them, wrote them, sing them in here. So there's one about 3/4 of the way in, and then there's one at the very end. And they're beautiful. Definitely, if you're listening, what you got to do is, like, you got to, you know, I listen at 1.8 speed. You don't want to listen to a song in 1.8 speed. So when the song starts, put it back down at, like, 1.0 or 1.2 to listen to it. And they're beautiful. Like, they're beautiful. It was so touching, because kind of the point of the story too is that she's been a very manufactured type of artist, right? They made her to be marketable, to be what she is. And while she's there, she, like, discovers who she wants to be, right? So this was very movie-esque. This was almost Hallmark-esque because of, like, the humor level, and it's cute. You know, it's the, as I say, it's the NC-17 rated Hallmark film, right? Because we do get pretty spicy, and it gets pretty naughty in here once it happens. But it was a good amount of slow burn with that. And then, yeah, the way the third act resolved in this one, oh, it's classic, like, Elsie Silver for me, like, the good stuff. How this third act goes just gave me the warm and fuzzies. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. So good. So yeah, I gave it 6 stars because I, honestly, you guys, when I read her books these days, and maybe this will change eventually, but because I've given so many of her books 6 stars, when I read one of her books, I'm looking for things to take it down. I know I shouldn't, but because I know that I'm a broken record when it comes to Elsie Silver, I'm like, what are some things that bother me? And there just wasn't anything. This was wholesome. It was sweet. It was spicy. It was sexy. The heroine, like, isn't like over the top, like, bratty socialite stuff. Like, she honestly is pretty depressed when she gets there. Like, all these things, it's just so, and West, he is, like I said, he reminded me of, like, what's he a good mix of? Because he was fun. Like, he used to be a bad boy when he was young, right? So he has some tattoos on his knuckles, and he had, like, gotten arrested before and these things, and he gave his parents a tough time. And his kids are hilarious. And there's honestly, like, okay, so there's a beautiful scene in here where, like, so our heroine, one of the trigger warnings is that she did have childhood psychological abuse and things. Like, she wasn't hit or hurt, but she was strongly, like, disciplined by her parents always, and berated and told that she's not going to be good enough, and, like, all of these things. And so there's a moment in here which was a very touching turning point. Okay, so the sweet little girl, which I'm sorry, I don't remember the kids' names. There's so many kids that I read this week, it's hard to keep them straight. But the little girl wants to make something for Skylar. And so Skylar's sitting there watching, and she's like laughing so hard because the little girl is just going crazy and is going to make her this thing. And the little girl climbs up, and West comes in and is like seeing her do this. And she's like, Daddy said I'm not supposed to climb on the counter, but like, I don't know why I can't. And so she grabs the thing and it falls on the ground. And and Skylar's like, oh, and West is just coming in the room and he's like, that's why you're not supposed to climb up there, sweet pea. And Skylar's immediately like, she didn't mean to. It's okay. You know, she's immediately trying to stop him. And Wes is just like, honey, don't move. Let me come and get you. And he like walks over the glass, picks his little girl up and like walks her to the outside and is like, go play outside with your brother. I'll let you know when you can come in. And Skylar is just like, please don't be mad at her. And he's like, it was a plate or a glass. I don't know what it was. It was a glass. It was a plate. He's like, it's no big deal. I have so many mismatching things because of having kids. Like, it's totally fine. And she just is so, you know, it clues him in that, okay, she's had it tougher than I thought, because that shouldn't be the reaction that you have, you know? And I think of it as true as like, I've broke stuff when my parents were mad, but they were never like screaming at me, right? So anyway, so it's not poor little rich girl, but some people might feel that way. I don't know. I didn't feel that way, mostly because she is very humble for the life she's had, you know? Again, she's privileged, but she very much acknowledges it in a lot of parts of the book too. So I've talked enough for not wanting to give spoilers about this. I gave it 6 stars. It's a 3.5. There was some spit play that happened. Oh my God. Elsie, what are you doing, girl? Oh my God, it was hot. It was hot. I won't tell you what happened, but it was good. There's lots of dirty talk. He's got good dirty talk. So yeah, there was childhood, psychological abuse, trauma, substance abuse / death. That was mentioned in the past, for someone. I won't say who it is. So there we go. Alrighty, look at us going on 50 minutes. I knew half the video was going to be those two because they were just, it was good. But now we have a reread here. So I reread Fall With Me by Brooke Montgomery. I received an ALC of that one. So I wasn't even planning to reread the whole thing. I know that's weird, but like I read that just not that long ago. So sometimes if I get an ALC of a book I've already read, I'll listen to like the first chunk of it and then I'll listen to the end, so that I get a good thing of the narration. Because that's what I'm doing. When I'm reviewing a book I've already read, I'm really reviewing the narration. Like, do I like how they sound together? All those things, right? But I was working on my next like book nook and working on sewing stuff, and I listened to the whole thing in an evening. It was just fine. It didn't necessarily well, no, it did actually. I bumped up my rating like 0.5 star with this, because listening to it, and also, now that I knew what was going to happen, I wasn't as upset about a few of the revelations. And in fact, I could kind of see how it played out a little bit more. So I did bump this one up to a 4. Though the spice stuff, I still am annoyed. I know I'm saying spice, like the romance, I wish there was still more in this book. Because the big weakness, in my opinion, with this being an amnesia romance is that the scene where she gets amnesia that we saw at the end of book 2 doesn't happen until 40% into this book. So really, you have 40% onward. So 60% of the book is all that they get to fall in love. And this isn't a very long book because she doesn't remember any of the stuff. And she also hated him before then. So I just don't think that this was paced right. It needed to be a little bit longer, or else some of that stuff, right? So still 4 star, 2.5 on the spice scale. That's an amnesia, enemies to lovers, small age gap. She's a barrel racer. He is a horse trainer, and he handles a breeding program. So, okay, then there is Read My Lips by Lila Heron. This was the Patron book of the month, which I need to actually raffle off today. This was for Forced Proximity, but I don't review the books for you guys that I review for Patreon. I keep that private, but I will say this is going to show up in a few recommendation videos because it does have some very specific kinky things and like wild things in here. But this is a newer author. I think she only has one other book. This is the first one in a new series, and it just came out a couple months ago. But this one has like kind of a female serial killer type thing, but it's more like a hit woman. She has a list of people she's getting revenge on, and her stalker is the hero, and he is just very impressed with all of her killing and things she's doing as well. So this was also too of like, she almost felt like an alpha female going against him too. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Check out my Patreon. You can actually do the free trial and get access to all of my reviews if you'd like to. And then maybe stick around for the future and help vote on which books that I do. Then I had another reread to annotate Devil in Disguise. I've reread pretty much all the books in the Ravenel series as I've been annotating them. This one is, of course, the last one in the Ravenels, and it's the Ravenels Meet the Wallflowers, which is just great. It actually is kind of funny because it actually is two kids of wallflowers. So honestly, this is more of another wallflower than a Ravenel. It was funny, that hit me when I was rereading, because this is the child of Marcus and Lillian, and then it's also the bastard child of Sebastian, which those are both wallflowers. So I didn't think of that, but it's the Ravenels Meet the Wallflowers because these they're the same age as the Ravenels really, and they interact with mostly just with Garrett though. So yeah, it's funny. This is more of another wallflower book than a Ravenel. I didn't even think about that, but this is the last book she's ever put out, and it might be the last she ever writes us. We don't know. And upon revisiting that, with that thought, if this is the last book of her she ever read, I do think that was smart of her to kind of wrap up some stories within the Wallflowers. One of the things I love in here, besides loving Merritt and Care, they are wonderful. This has amnesia in it too. But Sebastian and Lillian have kind of a final forgiveness with each other, because Sebastian did some pretty awful things to Lillian. He kidnapped her and was going to force her to marry him in the Wallflower series, right? And their families are still friends and have been, and their kids are friends, and they've grown old together. But he realizes in this one, he's like, I just kind of took it for granted that it was in the past, but I honestly want to ask forgiveness for what I did. And it's really beautiful to revisit. But this was a 6-star read the year that I read it, and honestly, rereading it, it still is. It's beautiful. But yeah, these two have basically a one-night stand with each other, and then it's insta love between them. It is. They have this one-night stand, and then when he's going to get some work done, he has his whiskey that he's brought in that needs to get sold through her docks, and anyway, there's all that stuff that doesn't matter. But when he leaves, he goes back to his apartment, and it's been burned, and he has to jump out a window, and he loses the last 48 hours of his memory, which literally erases anything he knew about her. It was just gone. So yeah, so how would that be if you had an instant connection with someone, you were having all these things, and then they just forget you like that? So anyway, Devil in Disguise, wonderful to reread that. Then there was another upcoming release. This is another one that comes out on the 12th. This is Temptation Trail. This is a small town suspense romance by Claire Kingsley. This is my favorite in the series, for sure. So this series of hers is, they're all going to be small town suspense. I love this cover. This one is, he's hunting a killer, so she won't be next. Yeah. So this one we have Garrett Haven. He's a single dad. His son is a teenager, and he's also a detective here, but he has to do kind of both things because it's a small department. And in the beginning of this book, he actually is supposed to have a blind date with this woman named Harper. His aunt and her aunt are trying to set them up on a date because they're little meddlers. You know how it goes. And he is answering a call about something, and he finds a piece of evidence that connects to a cold case that has been cold for, I don't know how long it is. I can't remember. But it's been a cold case for quite a while. And so he ends up getting distracted and doesn't make it to this date. He stands her up. Now, Harper, she mostly takes this in stride. She leaves the timber beast a little bit sad, but she believes she has bad luck because she broke a mirror almost 7 years ago. It's not up. So she's like, oh, well, he probably would have been weird anyway, and I don't want to bring my bad luck onto anyone else, right? But she's actually in town because she's taking over her aunt's bakery, who her aunt is sick and is having treatments, and she is a baker, and so she's happy to take it over, and so she's taking that over. And then just like the next day, actually, Garrett's son does something pretty naughty. He steals food from the bakery, which he didn't need to do, and Garrett catches him with this. So like Harper just sees him as he's like running away with this stuff, and she's like, really? And she doesn't have time to deal with it right now. But when Garrett gets home, he discovers his kid has all this stuff, and he's like, how did you get this? And he's like, well, I bought it. And he's like, no, you didn't. I know how much money you have, and you couldn't have got this. And he's like, what am I going to do? Like, this is my kid. I don't want to be that guy who like lets his kid get away with it, but also I don't want to be too harsh and then have him rebel. So he like doesn't know what to do. So he decides, he's like, okay, here's the two things that you can do. We'll take it back and you'll apologize and ask how you can repay her. Or two, I'll ask one of my fellow officers to do the arresting and we'll book you in, you know. And he's hoping that's enough to scare him. And of course it is, because the kid, you know, the kid's not... Owen is his name. So anyway, so they bring it back and they haven't met each other yet. So when he comes in and she says her name is Harper, she's the new baker, he's like, oh my God, this is the woman I stood up. And she's the prettiest woman I've seen in forever. So he's immediately like, damn it, I wanted to have a date with her. Stupid. And when he introduced himself and his son, she's like, oh, you're the guy who stood me up. And he's like, I'm so sorry. It really was work. And again, she just brushes off. She's like, it's okay. Number one, it's your job. Like, you have an important job. And number two, I'm cursed anyway. Like, it's fine. Like, she just says it. So whatever. But anyway, what she asks Owen to do is to come work for her for a like Saturday to pay back all the stuff that he took. And what I love is actually Owen and Harper become really good friends in this, and he ends up wanting to come back again and again. So that is the setup of this one. So where the suspense comes in is that he is looking into this bracelet, and we find out how it's connected to this cold case. And you know, because he is the detective / an officer, he's the one who gets kind of put on the case to look into it. And then some creepy things start happening involving Harper. And it becomes clear that whoever he's after knows that he's on to him and is repeating history with this time Harper as the target, which is why it says he's hunting a killer so she won't be next, because it seems to be that they're targeting Harper. So I loved this. I had an ALC of it, as well as I was so lucky to get this copy of it, which is why I have one and it doesn't come out till the 12th. It was actually sent with the cutest thing. Let me grab it. I should grab it before I say it. I mean, it is the promo stuff, so I might as well show you. I got this in the mail. It came with the signed book plate, which I put in there already. And then it came with this Timber Beast Tavern, what's it called? Coaster, which actually has kind of a significant part in the book. So I thought that was cute. And then it came with this thing of baked good cookies, and I'm kind of obsessed. I won't lie. It's so cute because the amount of like baked goods that are talked about in here, I definitely bought crumble cookie the other day while I was listening to it because it was so much. But I gave this 5 stars. I had such a good time. It's my favorite in the series. This one even has just a little bit more spice than the previous ones. I mean, I've shared with you these. She's really gone more towards closed door just for personal reasons and not wanting to write as much spicy scenes. But I was a little bit shook because the first scene is actually a full one, and it was hot. And then kind of after that, she went to Fade to Black, which was great. Like, again, going into her books, knowing that it will be closed door, like, I just enjoy the story, right? You're not waiting when it'll finally bubble over into something. You just enjoy it. So tropes with this one, though. I'm about to say a spoiler, so if you don't want to know, just click till I'm holding up the last book, because there's just one more book to talk about. This is a small town suspense with a surprise pregnancy, okay? Single dad, police officer, and yeah, it is suspense. There is a serial killer in here who's hunting them. So there is some darkness involved with that, some kidnapping and stuff happening in here. But I will say, because this is like, there's an actual serial killer we're fighting in here, like, it's crazy. The kidnapping and trying to murder part of it, it actually like needed, like, this is the type of story you'd put it in, right? Whereas I feel like sometimes with suspense ones like that, you know, I always joke there's a third act kidnapping that happens all the time when I feel like it doesn't need to be. But with this one, number one, I was shocked with who got kidnapped, and number two, like, you knew it, like, it had to happen because, like, we have to have that confrontation with who that guy is. So anyway, 5 stars, 2 on the spice scale, actually. So there we go. Okay, then we just have one more. And I don't actually have too much to say about this one, and not just because I'm over an hour already. So last night I squeaked in Trial of Dust and Dreams, which is the second book in the Fae Devil series by Lana Perchek, whatever, you know who I mean. I've been highly anticipating this one since the cliffhanger that was at the end of Castles of Nevers and Nightmare. This is a Why Choose. This is Willow, who is the daughter of the, like, in the Fae Guardian series, and the Slua, which are, they're difficult to describe. We're not going to get into it, but it's supposed to be a Why Choose. In the first book, once she is put into contact with them, 5 of the 6 Slua actually have amnesia, and they don't know that she's their fated mate. In fact, they hate her for certain reasons. Only one of the Slua has his memories, and throughout that first one, just a tiny spoiler to get it, it was actually a sacrifice from the other 5 so that one of them could keep their memory to help. Like, they made that happen. So in that first book, there's one of the Slua who is the only one who remembers. And so he's very isolated, very lonely. And they also used to be able to share, like, they shared mind with each other, and that's been broken because of this curse they have too. So he's been very lonely, and so he's the only one that she's really building a romance with in the first book. And then something happens and we no longer have access to that Slua. And then at the beginning of the second book, which I had forgotten this happened to that. So we know at the end of the last one that there's this pair of spectacles that have been, I don't know if they were blessed or if they made or whatever, but one of the Slua only one of them, you can't just switch it off. Either you have to pick one. They will put on these spectacles and they will get their memory back. And so she has to choose which Slua she's going to give their memory back to. And I thought that was very interesting how she decided who it was. And then also, something that was a little bit frustrating, though, is once another Slua has their memories back, and now, like, you know, he's on her team too. We don't have access to Fox, like I said. But I just feel like not enough progress was made in this romance, right? Like I've said when I reviewed that one, I thought this was actually a great setup for a Why Choose, because the Slua are 6 beings, but they also share one mind. They have a hive mind. They're called the Hive. And so it made sense to me that they would have one, like they have a queen that will be their mate, right? And they used to be under control of an evil queen, which made them more evil. And now they have the chance to have Willow be their queen, which, you know, they want her to be their queen. They like that idea, but none of them remember that, right? And I just feel like we didn't make enough progress with the other Slua. Like, we got a new POV of a Slua, because the first book it was Fox and Willow and like one other that showed up. This time we can't have Fox, so it's her and one of the others as a POV, and then we get a different one in there like 2 or 3 times. And I just feel like, why didn't we, I mean, I understand why she didn't want us to have 7 POVs, particularly because they're not all important at the one time, but I don't feel like I got to know any more of the Slua more than I did, except that one. And so I'm like, is she gonna make a book for every Slua to have their POV? Because I don't know if there's enough to this story to have 6 books worth. I just don't. I already am kind of over the games that she's in. Like, there's these games. That's the whole reason she was like taken and all these things. That was confusing as hell to me in this one. Maybe it's just because it took so long for this one to come out, which, I mean, it's not like it was a horrible amount of time. Like, it's a fantasy series. One came out in March, this came out in August. It's not awful, but I just don't feel like I was connected enough to anyone, you know. And then in the reviews, people were like, oh, it was so steamy. No, it wasn't. There was only one, like, full sex scene in this anyway. And I'm only complaining about that because I want to feel closer to these other Slua. And there's just one that we get really close to this time. And I'm like, why is she only getting us close to one guy at a time? We're not working on all of the relationships together. So that makes me worried that this will be, I haven't heard her say anywhere, but I'm worried now that, is every Slua going to get a book where they're the main focus? Because I don't want that. I don't think there's enough story for that. So I was actually pretty disappointed, and I know I ended up skimming a lot last night because I love Willow, but I love Fox, and she's trying to, you know, and I don't understand what's happening in the story as a whole is what I'm lost on. And I don't feel like we made enough romance progression. Like, yeah, I want there to be more scenes where we're like all together, which I know we won't all be together always, but like, I just don't think we're making enough progress with it. So this felt very much like a book that I was just lost the whole time, and it's 500 plus pages of that. So I was pretty disappointed with this one, and I don't even know whenever the next one is because she's not going to set release dates anymore, which is fine. I understand that. She's like, I'm tired of pushing them. I'm going to wait. Great. I respect it. But I just had so much hype for this one because I was so intrigued by the first one and everything that was being set up. And then it just felt like we backslid so much. So it makes me nervous how many books are going to be. I don't know if she's said it in her Patreon or any of the other places, but to me, I don't know. And I don't know what the story arc as a whole will be that will necessitate having that many books. So anyway, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe someday, like when the audios for all of these are out, I would binge them and I'll feel how more it's cohesive. But right now, I just feel like, and I feel like this book too took place within like less than a week. Because there was a part of the book when I was at 60% that she said it had been 5 days since this thing happened. And I was like, that's it? So I don't know. I'm not loving that. So I gave this one 3.5 because it was an arc. It was like a 2 on the spice scale. And I wasn't feeling it. I don't feel like I know any of the 6 any better except for the one whose POV we got this time, and I just don't think that's enough when you have so many characters. I have even forgotten 2 of their names. I keep forgetting, which again, I know that's a lot of names, but like usually I'm better with that when it's a love interest, and it's because there's like no page time for those characters at all. So yeah, bummer. But anyway, it was still a wonderful week. No pouting from me here. Loved so much of it. And yeah, if you would like to purchase any of these books or pre-order the ones I was gushing about, I do have a list of them down below. If you use the Amazon link, it helps out my channel, as well as it helps the authors if you pre-order things for sure. I mean, it helps them if you buy their books, whether you pre-ordered or not, but you know what I mean. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.